I'm Deborah here at George Washington Carver School of Arts and Science, and with the past mass shootings that have happened this year alone in Parkland, Florida, Indiana, and now Texas, many students have been speaking out. In response to this, people have been saying that they've been used as puppets for political reasons. And we just wanted to see the views here at Carver. On March 14th, students voted with their bodies at the walkout. So let's see how that went.
Hello, my name is Brandon. March 14th, 2018, George Washington Carver students walked out. They walked out for many reasons. Others chose to not participate for their own reasons as well. Most of the students headed for the gym for a minute of silence for each of the people lost in the Florida shooting in Parkland at Stoneman Douglas High School. Others went to room 802 to wait out the 17 minutes. Whether it was poor communication or there was ambiguity about the event or on purpose, students were given a choice to voice their opinions with their bodies. Here's how it went.
Carmen Shentrup was 16. She was a National Merit Scholarship finalist. She passed all of her classes. She was a very well student. She was always friendly and always smiling, and she loved playing the piano. She picked the good songs, and she played them well.
Peter Wang was a JROTC student. The day of the massacre, he held the door open for his peers instead of saving himself. He was 15.
Hello, my name is Brandon Turley, and I'm here to interview people who did not participate in the walkout. So, JT, let's talk to you. All right. Was it yours or your parents' decision for you to not to participate in the walkout?
It was mine. Yeah.
What was the reason why you didn't participate?
Because it's all about gun control and guns are bad, wah wah. Okay, actually, that was bad. Okay, I didn't participate because, like, I'm not in support of gun control. Like, I'm all for honoring the lives of that were lost, and I'm all for that. Like, I'd love to honor their lives in some other way than a lockout that also supports gun control. Like, there's fair ways, I think, of like controlling guns and stuff, but like people are going bonkers.
Okay. Is that all your reasons why?
Yeah, pretty much. Like, it just supports something. There are two things that it's for, and I only support one of them.
Okay. Cool. Thank you. All right. What's your name?
Rusty.
Rusty. Was it yours or your parents' decision to not participate in the walkout?
It was mine.
Why?
Mainly because I have ADHD, so I know I would not be able to sit or stand for 17 minutes and silently. So I'd be moving around and I would disturb the peace. But also because there were many mixed answers on what the walkout was for. There was solely just that it's for honoring the deaths, and also honoring the deaths and for supporting gun control. And I wholeheartedly disagree with pretty much every single person who is talking about gun control right now.
Okay.
There are very few reasonable people who support gun control, and a lot of it's over the top.
Okay.
And in reality, it was the FBI's fault of why the kids were shot, or why the school was shot up, not gun control.
Okay. Is that all your reasons why?
Pretty much, yes.
Cool. Thank you. And, what's your name?
Richard Bogach.
Right. Was it yours or your parents' decision for you to not participate in the walkout?
It was my decision.
Why?
Well, I think it's great that we could just take a moment of silence to just honor the lives of those who are killed in the shooting, because and there was some teachers as well that try to protect kids, which I thought was great. But I do not support the radical way of them thinking we need gun control immediately, because I don't support it. That what they're trying to do is crazy. They're doing some workarounds to try to ban all guns, even though they're only claiming assault style weapons, and that's it.
Cool. Thank you.
I came to the event to pay respect for the people who died in the shooting.
What change do you want to see in the community?
I want to see a change in the gun violence, of course. I want there to be something done. I'm just not sure exactly what would be the solution. That's the problem. But something has to change. Maybe raise the age or something. I don't know. But something has to be done. I'd like to add that this is a very serious thing, and it could happen to any school, so we really need to focus, get prepared, and take this seriously, because some people are taking it as a joke, and it's not a joke at all. People died over this, so just really stay aware in everything. Be aware of what people are telling you. If you have any suspects, just be safe, and that's it.
My name is Joel Mateen Washington, and I'm a part of the drama group with Madam Faye. The reason why I wanted to come to this event was because I understand what it feels like to go to a school and for it to have a shooting and you lose close friends and your classmates. So I thought it would be best for me to come and pay my respects and just to be here, because I understand what that feels like. Something I would like to see change is with students. If they see someone posting something about shooting or gun violence at school, I feel that they should go tell someone, because what if they really do come and shoot the school? Then there goes another school shooting. How those changes would look with not parents checking the kids' pages, internet awareness, and gun violence awareness. Because I feel that the police also should take it more serious than what they have been doing. And thank you for the interview.
After the walkout, a segment was made on our school broadcast, Carver Hub, to see what students felt about gun violence. And let's see what was said.
I think guns, I don't like guns, but I think that there is, if they're in the right hands, you know, that it would be okay. And the right hands, I think, are like limited to certain people. Not really, just kind of like government people, I think, honestly, but with certain restrictions to them as well. So, but I don't like guns overall. I don't like them.
And you don't like how easy it is for someone to obtain a gun?
I do not like that either. I do not like how it's just easy. There's no examination or anything on their backgrounds. They just give them cash, and then there's a gun, and then bam, bam. It's stupid.
And do you feel safe at this school? And like at this school, like at this general school?
I feel safe at this school. Even though there isn't that much protection that I can see from guns, I somehow still feel safe at this school, I guess. Because, I mean, to me, I don't really think there's like that many people that like know about us and like about us in this area, so that's why I feel like kind of safe.
How do you feel about the school shootings?
I think I feel the same way as a lot of people do. It's just really heartbreaking seeing all the kids talking about what happened and the kids that were there. And it's something that should never happen anywhere, yet it happens here in our country way more than it should.
How do you feel about guns and how unattainable they are to obtain?
I think that it wouldn't be a bad idea if they were a lot harder to get. If someone really wants one, if they really need one, then they should have no problem going through all the, like, jumping through hoops to get one if they really want it. So I think that we should have a lot stricter gun laws.
Do you feel safe at this school and or in general?
At this school, for the most part, yeah. In general, no.
Why?
Because like I said, it's way too easy to get guns, and there's an argument that even if like it is made a lot harder to get guns, they'll find another way to like do those types of things, and I think that that's fine. Like if someone has to find a way to do that kind of thing, like they'll find a way, but it shouldn't be made easier. So with making it so easy for someone that's 19 to get a gun like that, they shouldn't be able to.
As you can see, many felt safe on our small school campus, but that was put to the test back in May.
You need to know that today a student brought a gun on campus. A gun. It was unloaded. There were no bullets in it. We are all safe because one student stepped forward to report this. One student had the courage to go to his teachers and tell us. And within minutes, Mr. Hurley and I met with the student, removed the gun, and the police were here. Within a half an hour, something that could have been very disastrous was not. Right now, all my energy and intention is coming out as tears and adrenaline, because your safety is essential. And one student made it so. I think we can all feel enormous gratitude for the courageous student who did not hesitate to report this to an adult. If it were nothing, then it would have been nothing. But it was something. And that's what's important to me. I trust you to tell me the things that you're concerned about. And this is an example of when that worked well and swiftly.
To learn more, we surveyed students at Carver about their views on gun violence. Here's what we learned. Looking at extremes, students were asked about banning all guns. 11% of the 9th grade surveyed yes. 16% of 10th grade surveyed yes. 21% of 11th grade surveyed yes. 12.5% of 12th grade surveyed yes. And then what about banning certain guns, just like an AR-15? 31% of 9th grade surveyed yes. 69% of 10th grade surveyed yes. 71% of 11th grade surveyed yes, and 61% of 12th grade surveyed yes. Now going on to changing gun laws to prevent gun violence. In the 9th grade, 74% surveyed yes, 10th grade, 58% surveyed yes, 11th grade, 68%, and then 12th grade, 54% surveyed yes. This also includes like the Second Amendment. So 9th grade, 63% of them surveyed yes, 63% again in 10th grade surveyed yes, and 80% in 11th grade surveyed yes, and 54.5% in 12th grade surveyed yes. Overall, a small percentage surveyed yes to banning guns. Then a higher percentage voted yes to banning only certain guns, for example an AR-15. High percentages in all classes wanted gun laws to change along with having the Second Amendment changed. And those are our results. Students elaborated on these views in a debate. This debate turned into a panel discussion. And here's what had happened.
This is Dr. Alessandri from Carver High School, and I'm joined by 6 students who are going to be discussing questions designed by a student and a teacher around the Second Amendment and gun control thoughts. The first question I'd like to ask you I'd like to pose the question. According to the National Rifle Association, only a good guy with a gun can stop a bad guy with a gun. Florida legislators extended that logic to schools, advocating that we arm teachers. But more mass shootings happen so fast, there isn't much time to react. Can one imagine a first-grade teacher stopping a determined killer? Is it fair to turn teachers into security guards? Is arming educators really a solution? I'm going to give you each 2 minutes to discuss among yourselves, and then please elect a spokesperson. I believe this group is going to respond first based on the coin toss. Do you have a spokesperson?
So you asked us if only a good guy with a gun can stop a bad guy with a gun. That's not true. There are, many ways to stop someone, and more guns really just mean more bullets flying and more risk of people getting hit. You could stop the shooter, but you could also miss and hit another student. And also, response time. Like, where are you going to get a gun that fast? If a teacher can access a gun that quickly, there's also a risk of a school shooter just getting a gun at the school from the teacher. So that's kind of like if you're going to safely store a gun, how are you also going to be responding fast enough to save someone? You also asked, is it justified to make it a teacher's job to protect the students? And it's not. They're there to educate the students. They're not there to protect them. If they are not comfortable with a gun, does that mean they're not fit to be a teacher? What if they're disabled? Does that mean they can't be a teacher? Or not everyone wants or is qualified to have a gun and use it. That really shouldn't be the teacher's responsibility. Okay. Could you remind us, was there any other points that you brought up in the question? Yeah, well, and...
Yeah, I think that's, we don't have to fill the time. This group, who's your spokesperson?
All right. So, first things first, the very first point of this question was, is the only way to stop a bad guy with a gun is with a good guy with a gun. I find that absolutely ridiculous, but it does bring up a fair point that a good way to stop somebody with a gun is with a gun. And unfortunately, that's the truth. But that does not mean that we should arm teachers. Considering a teacher is not a trained professional, somebody that is meant to deal with high stress situations where there could be a mass shooter or some kind of violent attack, that is not what a teacher is trained to do. They're not trained to deal with that kind of situation. I feel it is unfair to put that forward because a teacher is not somebody that's meant to respond to that. There are people that go through years upon years of training in order to respond to a situation like a mass shooting or a bomb threat or anything like that. And what was the second point of the question?
Is arming educators the solution?
I say if you wanted to put somebody who was with a firearm on a campus, it should be somebody who is trained and is able to deal with high-stress situations and is not meant to interact with the students at all. Because we hear often about even trained professionals making mistakes with firearms. So my point is that if we're going to have firearms on campus, it's better for it to be a trained professional than somebody whose job is there to protect the students. Oh my gosh, I messed up that last point, but whatever.
Thank you.
Thank you. Ready for your next question?
Yep.
The Second Amendment gives the right to bear arms. Should there be any adjustments to that? Think of the First Amendment. It grants freedom of speech, but there are limitations, such as no protection for dangerous or hate speech that advocates violence. Where is the line we draw with the Second Amendment, if any? I'm going to give you 2 minutes, and gentlemen, you'll start on the second question. Okay, time is up, folks. It occurred to me that it might be helpful to restate the question beforehand.
Yes.
So, and gentlemen, you'll begin. The Second Amendment gives the right to bear arms. Should there be any adjustments to that? Think of the First Amendment. It grants freedom of speech, but there are limitations, such as no protections for dangerous or hate speech that advocate for violence. Where is the line we draw with the Second Amendment?
Okay, so I don't feel that there should be any adjustments made to the Second Amendment because I feel like the restrictions that we have for the Second Amendment is kind of already there. Like, you can't legally go into a gun store and go up to the guy and ask, okay, I want a fully automatic gun with all the ammo. Like it's a lot. Well, one, you can't even buy one of that, and it's just like we already have kind of set restrictions. I mean, like, you could still buy an assault rifle, but it's not fully automatic. It's semi. It's kind of just the rate of fire is depending on how fast you can pull the trigger. And then what's the second part of the question?
Where's the line?
I feel like the line has kind of just been drawn of like super powerful guns, like people compare it a lot to the military, like what military what the military has as like the big automatic, but military also has tons of more guns. They have the the big, like, I don't even know what it's called. They have bigger guns. That's way more dangerous than a little assault rifle. And I think you can't really just go. I mean, obviously it depends state to state. I'm pretty sure you can get them in Texas, but in California you can't really get one of those. But
okay, your time is up.
Okay, so your question was how the Second Amendment, where should we draw the line, and should there be restrictions? Okay, so I think like, yes, we have some restrictions in place, and like especially California has like a lot of gun laws, and there's like a lot more than other states. And but I do feel like, why would a citizen, like a private citizen, need a semi-automatic rifle? Like, I don't understand that. But I don't think that all guns should be taken away. Like, that's not my stance at all, or any of our stance. Like, I don't have anything against the Second Amendment, but I think it was also written in a time where it was very, very different. Just the guns were different. America was different. We were fighting for freedom for Americans, and I don't think now we're not fighting for Americans. Well, yeah, some Americans, but not against the government. Like, we don't have to defend ourselves against our own government, and if we did, then our like semi-automatic rifles aren't going to do anything for you. So why is, like, I don't understand why you need that, and I think that's where the line should be drawn, like at semi-automatic rifles. Like, that should not be legal.
Right. Well timed.
Oh.
Yeah, I said
Yeah,
that
yeah,
if you had
yeah.
something.
Also, just you said there are already restrictions in place, but as you said, they're often state by state, and I think, and they can be changed, and I think there should be restrictions like in the Constitution that limit what we can buy, and also there should definitely be more rigorous procedures for getting a gun. It's not that difficult to get a gun, and maybe it should be. I mean, and also just the people often say, like, you know, it's for protection or fight back against the government. You know, maybe for protection, like a handgun or something, but what are you going to use a semi-automatic rifle for beyond a zombie apocalypse? Like, that's when you want one, but up until there, like, what do you need it for?
To that comment. Jen?
I just completely zoned out what I was going to say.
My main point would be that there are regulations in place already, and the issue is that these regulations aren't very effective at what they do. We have a lot of regulations that are not very effective, or they're not enforced strictly enough, such as background checks have issues a lot of the time, such as if you move to a different state, there can be issues with a background check. I feel like there should be some standardized issues and some standardized regulations federally, and then I think that we should, once we have that, I say it should be up to the state to state to decide on what firearms they want, because different areas have different threat levels of what kind of gun control that they would need.
Thank you. I think we could keep talking about this, but maybe we can refine the topic a little more with this next question. The Second Amendment dictates that one has the right to bear arms within a well-regulated militia. Militias include the police force, the military, the FBI, for example. Should the American public as a whole be seen and treated as a well-regulated militia? We have 2 minutes to discuss, and I think you will begin the conversation. So I will review the question. The Second Amendment dictates that one has the right to bear arms within a well-regulated militia. Militias include the police force, the military, the FBI, etc. Should the American public as a whole be seen and treated as this well-regulated militia?
I would say no, because we're not a militia. The American public is not a militia, and it's definitely not very well regulated. It's also, you know, a lot of people. So, I mean, the American public as a whole should not be treated as a single militia, because that's just, I mean, it's huge and not organized. Yeah. I mean, just,
no, I think you pretty much made my point.
I'd say that having the right to bear arms gives the American people the ability to form a well-regulated militia, and that the purpose of the militia is to protect your other constitutional rights, such as the freedom of speech, the Fifth Amendment. What's the right to due process? It's the Fifth Amendment. Fourth Amendment. Okay. An example of this in I forget. I mix up fourth. All right, but
well, you have to say what you mean. You don't have to say the number.
An example of this in recent history that I believe that they had the complete right to form an armed militia to protect their own rights is Japanese internment. So I feel if your rights are being violated, you have a right to form a militia to defend yourself.
Wait, are you done?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. So, like, I understood the question as, like, not... Because I think American people do have the right to form a militia. Like, that is a constitutional right, and I don't have any problem with that right. But I do not think that the American public as a whole is a militia. That's not what I don't think that is.
Yeah, I agree with that. The American whole is not a militia. That's a foolish thing to say. Unless there's an invasion of America, the entire American people aren't a militia.
Yeah.
But I say that that the Second Amendment is to protect the people's right to form a militia if the need ever arises.
Okay. Here's another direction we can take with this next question. Background checks won't end gun violence. Some of you mentioned that earlier. But they can stop a portion of the mentally ill population, criminals, or domestic abusers from purchasing guns legally. How can you argue that a better system won't prevent, or at least some, of these violent crimes where guns are involved? Okay, you have 2 minutes.
Wait, so...
Good. So I'm going to read it. Excuse me. It's my turn. Background checks won't end gun violence, but they can stop a portion of the mentally ill population, criminals, or domestic abusers from purchasing guns legally. How did we change this question? We changed a little bit. Are there better ways to prevent at least some of these crimes? Are there better protections that might prevent some of these crimes?
So I guess we should treat, for us, maybe a better system of handling guns is treating them similar to cars, where you have to understand the laws behind it, prove you know how to go through a gun, plus going through background checks, mental health check, and then trying to find an efficient way to keep track of guns being purchased and sold. I'll pass it to you now.
But yeah, because currently the current system that's in place for obtaining a gun, it varies from state to state, and it can prove ineffective at times, such as the case with the Las Vegas shooter, where he was able to, I believe he went to another state and got a firearm because his background checks passed in different states. But that I believe that is a common issue, is that background checks vary from state to state a lot because states keep different records of crimes, and I feel like if we made a more standardized system for that, it'd make gun control laws that are currently in place much more effective than they currently are. And I think that's the most important part of gun control, is making sure that the laws that we make are effective rather than making more laws.
So we also kind of came up with the idea of making it more like a car. Like when you're getting your license to drive a car, then you go through like written test, a test where you are like using the firearm, mental like health checks, and also just like I also want to point out like it's not like the background checks that are in place aren't very effective, and also like not all mentally ill people are going to use a gun to like kill people. I think that's a misconception that needs to be talked about, because I think it's unfair to like that community to say that everyone like who is mentally ill is going to do something like that. That's really all. Do you have anything? Oh, Leah.
Just with the sorry, I'm kind of forgetting what I was going to say. With the mental health things, there's that's just kind of a side point, but that's there's a majority of people have mental illness or know someone that has a mental illness of some sort. It's not a rare thing, and it's it's kind of annoying to hear like that mental illness should be something that would stop you from getting a gun, because there are some people with mental illness that would be a reason you wouldn't be allowed to get a gun, but it's not. There's a lot of different types of mental illnesses. It's not really what I meant to say.
I think that's the bell ringing now. So that concludes this broadcast of Carver Hub.
Oh, okay. Yeah, let's go down to Leah's. Okay. Just our name?
Hi, I'm Leah Faringer. I'm a junior.
I'm Rachel Lepetti. I'm a junior also.
I'm Elaine Voss. I am also a junior.
John Schaefer. Not gonna believe this. I'm a junior.
I'm Jack Smossman. I'm a senior.
I'm Stephen Mertz, and I'm also a junior.
A survey was handed to all the Carver teachers on whether they feel comfortable being armed on campus or not. All of the teachers said no, but I'm here with Miss Jenks, and she's one of the teachers who has had experience with military and the law enforcement. So Miss Jenks, you work in the law enforcement and we're in the military.
Yeah, I'm pretty much one of those people that our president said should be armed. I've been trained to use firearms in the military, namely in the U.S. Navy. And I also worked in the criminal justice system. I was a supervisor at a juvenile hall. So yes, I have been trained in firearms, and I worked in both types of positions.
Were you trained on using a firearm?
Yes, I was. I was trained on using a firearm, and I was also trained for hand-to-hand combat type situations.
Do you feel comfortable being armed on campus?
No. No, for a lot of reasons. So like one reason is I don't really know that you could keep a gun safe on campus. There's students in my room. I mean, I can't keep my pens and my markers safe. So let's just say I had a gun and I had to lock it in several cabinets to keep it away from students. Well, I wouldn't have access to it anyway. So I wouldn't feel safe having it on campus for that reason. And then I also wouldn't feel safe carrying it because, you very much get to know your students. So it's kind of like handing a parent a gun and saying, well, you'll need to be able to shoot your kid. No, it's not going to happen. I can remember being in a training situation for the juvenile hall, and the person who was training me, it was for hand-to-hand type combat, and the person said, there are three types of people in law enforcement. There's people who are power hungry. There's people who are bleeding hearts, and there are professionals. And he told me not to be a bleeding heart. And it pretty much knew at that point that it just was not the job for me. So I think teachers are a different kind of a person than a person who works in law enforcement. And I don't know that you're going to find somebody who's not a bleeding heart that isn't a teacher. So if I wanted to be in law enforcement, I would have been in law enforcement. And I purposely got out of that career field.
Okay, and that's it for today.
It seems that many feel mental health also contributes to gun violence. Our survey shows students' opinions on how mental health impacts gun violence. When asked, people with treated mental illness should have the right to bear arms. 54% of 9th grade surveyed yes. 53.5% in 10th grade surveyed yes. 55% in 11th grade surveyed yes. 39% of 12th grade surveyed yes. And then we also asked students about stigma. Does it prevent people from getting treatment? 9th grade, 57% of them surveyed yes. 10th grade, 52% of them surveyed yes. 11th grade, 100% of them surveyed yes. And 12th grade, 58% of them surveyed yes. So as you can see, the juniors have a bit of more different views on things. Students seemed to think, since stigma prevents people getting treatment, how would they feel about people with untreated mental illnesses? Should they be able to have guns also? In 9th grade, 9% of them presented yes. In 10th grade, 20%. 11th grade, 0% of them voted yes. And 12th grade, 9% voted yes. To explain further, a trust circle was done. A circle of trust is when there is a center circle and an outer circle. The people in the outer circle listen to the inner circle, and then an empty chair is in the center for those on the outer circle who want to add to the conversation.
Picture a wall, okay? It's got all the mental illnesses up there. Mental illnesses such as anxiety, depression, and bipolar disorder. Yes, that is a mental illness, but there is also a dimension of psychotic mental illnesses, which I think are extreme dangers when it comes to owning a gun. Like, is it the best decision to own a gun if you're depressed or you're dealing with bipolar disorder and you're not, you don't have it under control? And it's hard to have a mental illness under control. It's hard to even be aware that you're having an episode when it's happening. I think we should worry more about the psychotic mental illnesses such as schizophrenia and stuff like that. And if you do have these, I'm positive they would come across it in a background check if you're trying to get a gun. And you can't get a gun overnight. They do background checks. It is a process. It's not super easy to get a gun. And if you do have a mental illness and it's, you're struggling with it, I don't see how you could easily get a gun.
I think if you can control yourself and you want a gun, then I guess go ahead, but it's just gonna make things easier to do, like killing yourself or other people. But also I feel like people are gonna hurt someone or themselves if they really want to without a gun.
Yeah, I mean, like I was saying before, mental illness is really stigmatized and these people need help. I myself struggle with mental illness, but I have it under control. Other people I don't know about, like people with schizophrenia, they were talking about how they sometimes don't feel like they're under control of themselves. I just feel maybe people should be medicated if they're allowed to have a gun.
All I have to say is that guns just make it easier to do bad things, but bad things are still gonna happen regardless.
I would like to add, I personally don't feel like it's the gun that's the issue. I think it's the people that are the issue, and there are some dangerous people out there. There's also some fairly innocent people out there. I believe everyone does have the right to bear arms if they want.
I would just agree with what you're saying about how there's a lot of different types of mental illness, and so I don't really think it's a accurate thing to say people with mental illness should or should not be allowed to have guns, because there's way more than one type of mental illness, and so it's not like should people with mental illness be allowed to have a gun. It's like people with anxiety have a gun, people with schizophrenia, should they be allowed to have a gun? And there's differing levels of mental illness too within those.
My major issue with more gun laws is I don't see them doing anything. You look back 20 years ago, they had less strict gun laws, but what did you not see every year? Like, multiple shootings. Like, I personally do not believe stricter gun laws would do anything about the shootings that have been happening recently. This is a major issue with our society. Because like I said, 20 years ago, school shooting, that was unheard of. But today, like, if you heard about it, you'd be like, oh, damn, that sucks. Another one? Man, that sucked. But 20 years ago, it was a way different thing. So I feel like this is just kind of an issue with our society, and no gun laws would help. That's just my opinion.
Sorry, this is from earlier from what you were saying, but you were saying that instead of targeting the mentally ill people, we should help them out. Well, maybe some mentally ill people, not all of them are out to shoot up a school or hurt somebody else. Maybe some of it is like internal and all they want is help. They don't want to hurt anybody.
My issue, I think that people tend to make the argument a lot that you can just, if there are more gun laws and guns become harder to get, that you can just go out and buy one illegally, even if you can't get one legally. I find that to be a little bit ridiculous because while that argument, yes, does make sense, statistics have proven and studies have proven that in countries with stricter gun laws like Australia and Sweden, there are proportionally a lot less gun deaths and mass shootings.
What about video games? Do they contribute to gun violence? In 9th grade, 40% of them said yes. In 10th grade, 20% said yes. And 11th grade, 38% said yes. Seniors gave similar views about the contribution. Here's John and Tori, and here is what they have to say about it.
Looking for nonsense things to blame, Fortnite's a third-person shooter video game that has been blowing up in the heat of gun control debate.
Fortnite is arguably the most popular game this year with competitors in the same genre like PlayerUnknown Battlegrounds, aka PUBG, or H1Z1.
Violence.
Political debates have escalated to the 2016 election winner and current President Donald Trump, stating that violence in video games is shaping a child's mind to commit these crimes. Even the American Psychological Association and the American Academy of Pediatrics suggested that children should be kept away from violent video games, but shown no correlation between video games and violence.
According to CNN, 90% of children in the U.S. play video games, yet they can only refer to a handful of crimes where people committed violent crimes, branding them criminals. However, CNN fails to provide a connection between video games and violence because it is not possible and or not real. 90% of children play video games in the U.S. Also, according to CNN, 85% of those games are on the market contain some sort of violence. According to the belief that children's minds are shaped based off these video games, then a majority of the U.S. kids are required by nature of the belief to commit some sort of crimes relating to the video games that they play, which is just not true.
Fortnite, a cartoonish game of battle royale that contains no form of gore or blood, has been targeted by gun control activists because it is apparently a gateway to violence. If video games had a correlation between violence, then why not pursue a video game that has a substantial amount of violence in it, like Call of Duty or Battlefield, to push your clouded point across rather than targeting a more popular, tremendously less violent video game surely because of its popularity just to push your agenda. This has been John Taylor
and Tori Mason
with the Carver Hub,
and we're signing out.
So what really does contribute to gun violence? When asked if media contributes to gun violence, 86% of 9th graders said yes, 70% of 10th graders said yes, and then 71% of 11th graders said yes. 38% of seniors said yes. When asked in a separate survey how media contributes to gun violence, students had things to say. As in, media glorifies gun violence, media normalizes gun violence, media tends to talk about the shooters more than the victims. Shooters are seen. Do students feel safe at school? In 9th grade, 80% said yes. 10th grade, 81% said yes. 11th grade, 63% said yes. And in 12th grade, 54% said yes. Then we asked at large gatherings in general, do you feel safe? 9th grade, 60% of them said yes. In 10th grade, 54% of them said yes. 11th grade, 43% of them said yes. And then in 12th grade, 57% of said yes. So in conclusion, we took a survey here at Carver, and many of them said that they do feel safe on campus. But a lot of them also said that they don't feel safe off of campus. We do believe that the law and the amendment should be changed. And we don't really know how, but we do believe that there should be stricter regulations. So, yeah.
A big part of this is considering that not all guns should be banned in general, just so people that do want to have the right to bear their arms, they can feel free to do so. It's just there has to be more regulations and stricter laws abiding the use of these guns and how they should be used and carried on a person. Another big thing is how the president wants teachers to have guns or voluntarily carry guns on campus if they have prior military experience. Proper clearance could be added to teachers' recommendation or anything that could allow them to have a firearm on their person. As for the students at George Washington Carver, we all believe that this shouldn't be allowed at all. We have a teacher on campus that has prior military experience. Her name's Miss Jenks, and she also believes that it's not okay. It's just the students mostly believe that it's not okay, and she just feels uncomfortable with the fact of having a gun on campus. As for video game and media, video games are considered pretty bad, sometimes gruesome, but a good portion of the children don't believe that it has too much of a contribution to everything that's happening, but mostly all of the kids that were surveyed all agreed that media and news coverage has a huge effect on how kids take in what happened and how they might retaliate or how they might look at what's going on. And here's a fact from Deborah Apolato.
So within this past year, there has been around 24 shootings that has happened. And there's only 6 months that have gone by. So that basically means that there's been 4 shootings every month. And to sum that down, that's basically 1 shooting every week. So it really is a big problem and we need to get it fixed.